going to start it on Facebook, and then we will actually start. Okay, so
Yay.
just bear with me here. It's a very exciting month that we're going to be talking about here. Okay. Preparing live streaming preview. That's what it says. Hold on.
Coming
This
to
is
you.
how, this is like, however long this takes is what it is. All right.
So, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I haven't had my chart done in many years. I did have it done many years ago. That was so fabulous. And so that's a really good friend of mine who did it. So I'm, you know, I'm here out of curiosity to see how you apply. And I am always interested in the kind of the connections between what's Israel and India, you know, the ancient connections, you know, there. So the astrological stuff that is present in our history that we don't really talk about very much.
Right, and that's also what I'm interested in, and like, why aren't we talking about this? And it's always for really dumb reasons, as far as I'm concerned. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Julie, when you had your chart done, because you mentioned India, did you have like a Western astrology or a Vedic astrology?
You know, I can't remember, but I think it might have been Western.
Around.
I know there's a difference. I do know that. I hosted for a few years a woman who was studying Vedic astrology with this guy named Art. Do you know him?
Yeah, Vedic.
Vedic. Right. I'm from the South. What do I know?
Veda. The
Yeah.
Vedas. Yeah.
Well, you know what? In Texas, we're so weird. We don't know how to say anything. I am bilingual, however. I speak Texan and English.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, anyway, this woman who stayed with me, you know, was very invested in all the applications. We talked some, and you know, I did some expressive arts with her. It was all cool. But
did she do, when she did your chart? Did you look at it? Was it round or square?
It was round.
Okay, then it's a Western astrology chart, because Vedic charts are actually rectangular. Or
no, it was round. It was round. It was. I have an amazing chart, actually.
Everybody, you know, charts are amazing. They're like individual fingerprints in a very special way. Even if a person is a twin, like my grandchildren are born 1 minute apart, so they have literally the identical chart, but their nishanas are different. So it's like,
Of course.
it has, the numbers are all the same, but it's like, there's a dress. I'm wearing a dress and you're wearing the same dress, but it looks different because we're different people. The dress is the chart.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how it works. So anyways, we're broadcasting, we're recording, it's all happening here. It's 12:08 p.m. on the 17th, and I'm very excited to be talking to you about Chodesh Av, the upcoming month of Av. And I'm going to share my screen with you so we can all be entertained by my wonderful slideshow. Okay. So here we go. So Chodesh Av actually starts next week, so just in a few days, and it is a very intense month, and I think we already know that, but we're going to talk a lot about why it's such an intense month. Before we do, because there's some newcomers here, I'm just going to review a little bit about the question that was brought up at the beginning of the class is, why aren't we talking about astrology? Because on one hand, you've got the legal prohibition against inquiring of astrologers from the Shulchan Aruch in the textual tradition. And on the other hand, you've got astrological motifs in art and artifacts, household items, ritual objects, calendars from the time of antiquity through the modern age in Jewish communities all over the world. And this suggests that astrology was a common component in the lives of Jewish communities everywhere. So if this is true, and this is factual because you can see it's written down, why? Okay, so first you have to look at the fact that everywhere you look, you can see gorgeous zodiac themed art and artifact. This is a gorgeous painted wooden synagogue in Poland with zodiac art all over it. And there are many, many examples of this that I'm going to show you just relating to the tribe of Shimon, but there's an entire like art history presentation behind this. So just take my word for it. And if you don't believe me, you can go to the Bezalel Narkis database, online database of Jewish art, and just start searching through there, and you can see thousands and thousands of Jewish art pieces that have astrological themes from antiquity until modern times. So why do you think that we are so interested in the stars? Well, first of all, that was the only game in town, okay, up until the invention of Netflix. No, that's a joke. Up until the invention of electricity. At night, there was nothing to do but to watch the stars. Everybody knows that all the ancient civilizations told stories about the stars, but in our particular case, in the Jewish tradition, we have a tradition of the creation of the sun and the moon and the stars, metaphorically speaking or symbolically speaking, on these successive quote unquote days or epochs or time periods of creation. So the stars that we have were all put into place. And even though there are 88 constellations in our little galaxy, we only use 12 of them, and we use the same 12 of them. And they are divided up into something called constellations. There's 12 of them. In real life, these constellations are not evenly distributed. Some are very tiny, some are gigantic, but there is what is known as the ecliptic, right? It's the line around the Earth that all of these constellations are given a 30-degree rulership over, okay? So it exists above and it exists below. As you see, all of the tribes, the 12 tribes, or each of them are related to one of the 12 constellations, and it's the same figure above as it is below. In other words, the shape of the tribes around the Mishkan, which we're going to look at later, is the exact shape and configuration as the tribes and the constellations that they're attached to. And this is all described in the book of Numbers, chapter 2, by the way. It's all written down. So this month, we're in the month, we're about to become in the month of Chodesh Av. It's the Mazal of Aryeh. This is Leo the lion. This is a picture of Mazal Aryeh, as you can tell from the Sefer Avrinot, which was a book, a beautiful book of I can't even say the word, intercalations, which is how you figure out how the calendar is going to not be off. It's how you keep the Jewish calendar. This is the leap year, the method of making leap years, and also the method of adding an extra day to a month, a Rosh Chodesh to some months, an extra day, to keep the calendar on track. So this is from 1716. This is a Torah binder from Germany, made out of a wimple, which is actually a circumcision cloth that was laundered and sewn together with other ones like it to make a binder for a Sefer Torah, and it's the Mazal of Aryeh. You can see the lion there, and this is the lion on the Hamat Tiberias synagogue from the 4th century. So you can see how it really goes over time periods. It's funny how the lion is smiling in this one. This is from the Michael Machzor in Germany, 1258, and this is another lion. The lion always looks so happy, right? He's a smiling lion. You don't really see like the violence of the lion in any of these, but you do see the lion leaping. you know, and you see that power. Leo, this picture here is a picture of what we like to call the zodiac man. In medieval medicine, medieval physicians believed that the zodiac ruled different parts of the body, and they would diagnose a patient according to their ailment and the different parts of the body and the zodiac associations with them, so that they would be able to make amulets to help heal them. So Leo, the sign of Leo in the month of Av, corresponds to the sides and the heart of the cosmic body. Think of like Leo the lion-hearted, right? Some sources also say Leo corresponds also to the shoulder blades and the spine. So that's in terms of the body parts. We've been going through that month after month. For those who are just joining us, we've been started off in Aries in Nissan, okay? So we're all the way to Leo now. And all of the 12 months in Kabbalah have a different permutation arrangement of the 4-letter name of God, the Yud and the He and the Vav and the He, starting off in Aries, which is Yud He Vav He, and going from Taurus, Gemini, Cancer. Now we're in the sign of Leo, and this is He Vav Yud He. This is the letter combination for this month. So Av is Leo, Aryeh the lion. It's ruled by the letter Tet. The ruling attribute is hearing, and we're going to talk about that. It's a fire sign. Leo is the fixed fire sign. There's three modalities of all 12 of the signs. Cardinal, which means initiating or starting something. Fixed, which is establishing something. And mutable, which is transforming something, right? So Leo is the fixed fire sign. And of course, there's 4 elements: fire, air, earth, and water. So Leo is about establishing inspiration, which is very much Leo-like. And the tribal ruler is Shimon. Planetary ruler is the sun. Okay, the Leo is the only month that's ruled by the sun, just as last month we talked about that Cancer, Chodesh Tammuz, the sign of Cancer, Sartan, the crab, is the only month that is ruled by the moon. So all the other planets rule 2 months each in the classical astrological system. The month of Tammuz and Av, which are ruled by the moon and the sun, are historically problematic for the Jewish people, as we all know, especially now that we're in the 3 weeks, we really know it. Astrologically, the powerful passions and the hot inflammatory temper indicated by the sun and the element of fire are tied to Shimon's nature. And this is also interesting. The letter Chet for Tammuz and Tet for Av spell out the word Chet, which means sin, indicating these weeks as a time of danger, the danger of falling into potential transgression. It is a very intense time. So what's the problem with the months of Tammuz and Av? We talked about this a little last month in relation to Tammuz. So it's a Kabbalistic idea that originated in the Zohar, I guess, that there's a certain amount of months that there was a machlochet, let's say, between Yaakov and his brother Esav. So Esav had to have his portion, right? So Esav, after some haggling and a few wars, ended up getting possession of the months of Tammuz and Av, but basically from the 17th of Tammuz to the 9th of Av. It got whittled down to this period of time. We call it the 3 weeks. And the opposite side of the year, he also has ownership of the time period of Tevet and Shvat, from the 10th of Tevet till Tu B'Shvat. So it's interesting how the 2 sides of the Jewish year are mirror images of each other, in that Yaakov had to give up ownership, so to speak, of this period of time. Right now, they're considered negative. They need to be handled with great care. That we are going to talk about shortly, about the rectification of that. Because anytime you see something like this, where, you know, it's given over to Esav and it's negative and it's bad things happen, you know for a fact that is a clue. That's a code for Mashiach. It's a code for redemption. It's a code for rectification in the Kabbalistic thought system. Okay, so hopefully you're all following me. So these are some images from Chodesh Av. You often see the tribe of Shechem, the city of Shechem, that was destroyed by Shimon and his brother Levi in their little hissy fit that they had. And we're going to talk about that soon. So, and there's many, many images of the gates of Shechem being the sigil, so to speak, on the tribe of Shimon's flag. And there's another version of it where, and you can see it here, this is a Torah crown from Turkey in 1928 with a sword on it. And you see that Shimon is written there. So another image for Shimon is this sword, which indicates a violent nature. So we've been going through the months. In this midrash, it talks about all the months of the year and why, it's like the month of the years God wanted to destroy the temple in every single month of the year, but every month had something to say for itself or some defense. So God delayed that. And so finally this midrash gets to Av, and it links Leo with Ariel, Lion of God, and which is one of the names for Jerusalem. So the idea is this is one of the reasons why he chose Av, because it was a link to Jerusalem. This is another view of this same graphic of the gates of Shechem. This is sort of a fun illustration, and the sword. So we all know that Shimon and Levi went and killed everybody in Shechem after they found out that their sister Dinah, who was the daughter of Yaakov and Leah, was raped by the prince of Shechem. Okay, and that made Shimon and Levi very, very angry. And later, their father gave them this, what some interpret as a curse. Shimon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. Let me not enter their council. Let me not join their assembly, for they have killed men in their anger and hamstrung oxen as they pleased. Very, very dense text there. There's been a lot written about it. But anyway, also about Leo's hot, passionate nature. Remember Zimri? He was the prince of Shimon. He probably rebelled against Moshe and the Torah with Cosby, the Midianite princess, basically having sex with her in public. And then Pinchas had to come along and put his gigantic spear right through both of their bodies, literally through their the parts of the two of them that were attached to each other during that act. So Shimon and Levi, they took revenge on the men of Shechem after the rape of Dinah, right? And Jacob gave them this blessing, which looks like a curse. And it's important to remember also that Shimon is not mentioned in the blessings of the 12 tribes by Moses, that Moses gave over in Deuteronomy. He blessed the 12 tribes. Shimon is omitted in that, okay? It's explicitly omitted. Why? I don't know. Let's talk about it. Because yet, Mashiach ben David is said to be born during Chodesh Av. In fact, on the very day of Tisha B'Av. So there you have Shimon, the being then looped back again to being the prince of the month of Mashiach. That's pretty big. So how do we explain this? I found this amazing explanation. This was on a shir on Parshat Vayechi by Rav David Millstone of Jerusalem, of the Rova, as a matter of fact. He cites this in a drash. He cites Yaakov Kaminsky in the Emet LeYaakov. This is a book that Rav Yaakov wrote. So he says regarding splitting them up, it seems to be a measure for measure punishment on the surface. It seems like they got what they deserve. But Rashi says that Yaakov was actually saying to Shimon and Levi that they would be scribes and teachers who would need to be dispersed among their people in order to be effective. Why? So he goes on to explain this. Amazing, amazing. Yaakov saw something in Shimon and Levi that was lacking in their other brothers. Okay? Yaakov rebuked them and said, you know, what did you do? They said to him, should our sister be treated as a harlot? So Yaakov understood that Shimon and Levi put their entire reputation on the line for the sake of their sisters. Think about it. All the other brothers knew what had happened, yet only Shimon and Levi did something about it. So Rav Kaminsky says that Yaakov perceived some awesome potential that needed to be channeled in the right direction. Here were two men who felt their sister's pain as if it were their own. Their understanding of danger and the need to react swiftly and precisely made them prime candidates to be the future educators of the Jewish people, if only the quality of their reaction could be refined. So he concludes that this is actually a great blessing and not a curse, that I will divide them in Yaakov and scatter them in Israel. So this is the mystery of Mashiach, the mystery of Mashiach, born during Chodesh Av, the month of Shimon, the awesome potential of a man who teaches others to respect and honor women. It's like literally, mamish, the rectification of Shimon's anger about Dina's rape. I think that's just amazing. Okay, so back to the attribute of hearing of the month, which is hearing. This is a well-known thought that the attribute of hearing connected to Chodesh Av is really the problem, the root of all of the bad things that happened to the Jews during the month of Av. It talks about that starts off with, you know, that starts off at the beginning, and we're going to talk later about all the things that happened in Chodesh Av, but the sin of the spies is that they brought back this evil report and the Israelites listened to them. They heard them, okay? So it's really important to hear correctly, to do a tikkun, to fix hearing during Chodesh Av. We hear something that pisses us off, right? We're angry. Oh my God, Trump did this. This other person did that. Of course, all of these things are horrible, but it's how we use that anger. It's how we channel that anger. That is what that is like the holy lesson of Leo. That's the lesson of Chodesh Av, is not being triggered by hearing something, but using that passion that's generated from what you're hearing to do something constructive. Also here we know that Av is the acronym for the two nations that destroyed the two holy temples, Edom, which is Rome, and Babylon. That's a little cute thing that somebody came up with. So the sun rules Leo. The power of the sun is obvious for all to see. The nations of this world reckon their calendar by the solar year. We have a lunar solar calendar. People will say, oh, we have the lunar calendar. No, we don't. Islam has a completely lunar calendar. Their months run backwards through the year, according to the moon's cycles. We have a lunar calendar that's fixed by a solar calculation. Why? Because we always have to make sure that Passover is in the spring. We can never have Passover at Hanukkah time, people. It is not allowed. So that's why we have a lunar solar calendar. And but the sun is so powerful. The Hellenistic planetary system assigns the sun to rulership of Sunday, right? Sunday, it's ruled by the sun. But we, in the Sefer Yetzirah, we attribute Jupiter, which is tzedek, to Yom Rishon, a day we don't call Sunday. We call it Yom Rishon, the first day. And we attribute the heavenly body of the sun to the rulership of Tuesday, the third day of the week. Okay, so Chodesh Av, here comes the sun, little darling, and it's going to be all right, but it's going to take some time and it's going to take some patience. So there's a great Talmudic passage on planetary influence in Shabbat 156a. If you're doing Daf Yomi like I am, you're just like, okay, I can't wait to get to you 156a, but I'm going through a lot to get there. It talks about the different attributes of people who are born under the influence of different planets. So he is born under the constellation of the sun. That's Leo. Leo is the constellation of the sun. This person will be a distinguished man. He will eat and drink of his own, meaning he'll have wealth or he'll have substance, and his secrets will lie uncovered. If a thief, he will have no success. That's pretty amazing, right? It says, well, blah, 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 blah. The brightness of the sun illuminates one born under its influence. So this person can't get away with anything because everybody's looking at them all the time. All their deeds will be visible. No secrets will remain unrevealed for those born under the sun's influence. I'm going to skip this part because we have a lot to talk about. This is just a little machloket between Sunday, the idea of the word Sunday in the Hellenistic system versus the Jewish planetary system. We call it Yom Rishon, and we say Jupiter is the planetary ruler, not the sun, and we have a little play on words there. So I want to talk about eclipses, okay, because if we're talking about the planets and we're talking about the 12 signs, in classical astrology, each of the planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, each of them rule 2 signs. But the sun only rules Leo and the moon only rules Cancer. And in a way, the sun and the moon are 2 in 1. They're those elemental luminaries that control, they're the closest to us, and they control us in terms of like the tides, sunrise, sunset. They have the most immediate physical impact on us. Okay, so how do they control us? Well, let's see, if you're a fisherman, you have to wait for the tides. So there's a sense of control. If you're outside all the time, you're going to get sunburned. I mean, there's just a million ways that the sun and the moon influence us. I shouldn't say control. I will say influence us, okay? So what happens when the sun and the moon have eclipses? What happens if there's a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse? So there's a whole lot about eclipses in the Jewish tradition. In the Babylonian Talmud and Sukkah in 29a talks a lot about eclipses. It says that when the sun is in eclipse, it's a bad omen for the whole world. It's illustrated by a parable. To what can this be compared? To a human being who made a banquet for his servants and put up for them a lamp. When he became mad at them, he said to his servants, "Take away the lamp and let them sit in the dark." So God is punishing us. Like, that's the idea there, right? I'm mad at you, says God. I'm going to take away the light. Rabbi Meir said whenever the luminaries are in eclipse, it's a bad omen for Israel because they are inured to blows. What does that mean? It's a school teacher who comes to a school with a strap in his hands. Who becomes apprehensive? He who is accustomed to be daily punished. So this is like, the Jews are blamed for everything. If something bad happens on an eclipse, the Jews are going to be blamed for it. This is straight from the Talmud. And already, by the time the Talmud is being written, so let's just say this is written between 200 and 500, just for fun, CE, okay? At that point already, the Talmudic thought is, we are the scapegoats of the world. If you look at this passage, it's very clear, okay? So it also says in this passage, a solar eclipse is a bad omen for what's called idolaters, meaning the nations, everyone who's not Jewish, the non-Jewish nations, is a bad omen for a solar eclipse. But the moon is a lunar eclipse is a bad omen for Israel, because Israel reckons by the moon and the sun. So all the different directions of like, where is the eclipse located? So there's a whole list of explanations about what eclipses mean. There's endless amounts of things that were written in medieval times and in antiquity about eclipses, because they were predictable. People knew they were going to come. I mean, but not the common people. The people who studied eclipses knew that, but it wasn't widely disseminated information, because people would fall into a panic usually. So basically, there's a negative view of eclipses held by the Talmudists, okay? So whether an eclipse is a bad omen for other nations or bad omen for Israel. It's bad for us in either way. We're going to take the blame for the negative effect of the eclipse. So this is in relation to the planet, or not the planet, the heavenly body of the sun, which is Leo, and how important it is in the zodiac. And of course, Leo would agree about being important because Leo is very into being important. This is just a little bit of more about that, just letting us know that the rabbis really understand that the effect of eclipses are really, really bad for the Jews. Either way, we're supposed to be like, oh, this is not good. So this thought process was also carried forward by the astrological commentators of the 13th and 14th century and the Jewish astrologers of medieval times. Nobody thought eclipses were going to be good for the Jews in any way, shape, or form. So people get really excited, like, oh, it's an eclipse. Okay, an eclipse, what does it mean? I saw a solar eclipse in 2017. The most astounding thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It literally changed my life. It was so, so powerful. And I knew it was coming. I drove to get there. I went to Oregon with a bunch of people to get there. Imagine just being a peasant out in the field and all of a sudden there's an eclipse, a solar eclipse where everything gets completely quiet and all the birds hush and suddenly it's nighttime in the middle of the day. It's very, very frightening. What do people do when they're scared? They look for a Jew to kill. Okay, that's the Talmudic and medieval point of view about eclipses. So back to Leo, ruled by the sun, which has eclipses. The glyph of Leo sort of looks like a snake, which is an ancient symbol of the sun, a symbol of life as it renews itself. It's fixed fire, as I mentioned before. The Sefer Yetzirah, interestingly, links the constellation Leo, obviously, to the month of Av. The planetary ruler is the sun, which rules Tuesday in our system. The right nostril, that's the sun, not Leo. It's the right nostril and the letter Kaf. Leo, the constellation, rules the right kidney and the letter Tet. The Sefer Yetzirah also links Leo to influence over wealth and poverty. The archetype is the king, right? The supremely confident person. The shadow side of Leo is the Lord and Master, or the braggart, and Leo's function is I create. So some of the key words for Leo: proud, passionate, fiery, generous, warm-hearted, egotistical, conceited, boastful, dramatic, showy and flashy, dignified, hates to be mocked, and mocks others in defense. Leo really wants to be respected. So they have a sense of inner dignity, and when that dignity is violated in some way, they react very badly. I would just cite, let's say, President Trump, who is a Gemini, but he has Leo rising and Mars, which is the planet that rules a person's aggressive nature, in Leo, conjunct his ascendant. So this is him. He hates to be mocked and he mocks other people. It's a classic textbook, Leo rising with Mars and Leo conjunct the ascendant. So other things about Leo: they're very entertaining, they're performers, they're charismatic, they exhibit amazing leadership, they're self-confident, they're self-assured, they have self-expression, creative power. They're like the sun around everything else revolves around. If there's any Leos in your life, you might know that that person is the king or the queen, and they have to be served. I have a Leo daughter, okay, and there's everybody else in our family, 4 children, 2 parents. She, as the queen, everybody has to bow, and not just that, when she roars, we all have to get under the table and hide. Not anymore, because we all live separately, because my kids are all in their 30s, but when they were growing up, she was very scary when she would roar in her displeasure, okay? Little Leo children, when they cry, they literally roar like lions. They have an amazing capacity to inspire leadership. Some people will follow them literally into hell itself because of their capacity to generate intense loyalty. And Leo is also the inner child, that sense of joy, that pure joy that the inner child has in psychology, and also the golden child. The element of gold is related to Leo. Now remember, everybody has Leo somewhere in their chart. You might not have a planet in Leo, but you have 12 houses in your natal chart, and one of them is ruled by Leo. So whether or not it has planets in it or it's just sitting there, you have this part of you in you. Just for fun, some famous Leo leaders: Obama, Clinton, Mussolini, Davy Crockett, Shimon Peres, and Menachem Begum. Look at these names. Napoleon, Shabtai Tzvi was a Leo. Jerry Garcia was a Leo. Mick Jagger is a Leo. Meghan Markle, classic Leo, married into royalty. The woman who wrote the Harry Potter series and the boy who played, the actor who played Harry Potter, Madonna. These are all just classic kind of Leo personalities. Mayor Kahana was a Leo. Feisty, right? Phyllis Schlafly, also Norman Schwarzkopf, the general. Simon Bolivar. These people were generals, and these people were military people. So there's a strong, like, kind of military leadership motif that runs through Leo. Leo, as I said, is motivated by the joy that she or he generates in creativity and generosity. This is a little chart thing that I made that sort of shows those rulerships that I talked about before. In classical astrology, how Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, Venus rules Libra and Taurus, Mars rules Aries and Scorpio, Jupiter rules Sagittarius and Pisces, Saturn, the seventh planet, way out there, Aquarius and Capricorn, but way up here, Cancer and Leo, Sun and Moon. So they're almost like, if you put them together as Sun and Moon together, they'd be like one planet, and they would rule these two signs. Yes, so this is a picture of, this is a very complicated picture that I drew many years ago, and I really need to update it and make it less complicated. But anyway, it's the 12 tribes around the Mishkan. It's a psychological portrait of the 12 tribes in their positions in the zodiac as they relate to the constellations and the signs and the ruling planets and everything else. And it's really a picture of the 12 tribes around the Mishkan, because the Mishkan in the middle is like your inner Levi'im. It's where the Levitical families, so to speak, in a metaphorical sense, function on the inside of your personality. So here's some notable events in Chodesh Av. Okay, it starts off pretty good. It's Aaron HaKohen's yahrzeit. Very important day, the day that Aaron HaKohen left this world, and the day also that Ezra, the scribe, arrived in Israel. The 5th of Av is the yahrzeit of the holy Ari HaKadosh, Rabbi Isaac Luria, who's buried in Sfat, where I used to live. I actually lived up the street from his kever and looked at it every single day. First time we went to the moon was during Av, which is crazy. We really should have gone during Tammuz, but anyway, it was Av, but it was solar Cancer. It happened on July 16th, so the sun was in Cancer, but it was already the month of Av. Then stuff starts getting really, really terrible, right? The first temple was invaded on the 7th of Av after nearly a month of fighting inside Jerusalem. Then the 9th of Av, for which we are going to fast, and we can next week. Oh, so many bad things happened. The Exodus generation condemned to die in the desert. So everybody over the age of 20, you're not going into the promised land. Sorry, not sorry. You didn't have enough faith. You wanted to go back to Egypt after the spies brought evil report. You listened. Your sense of hearing was corrupted. So you have to die in the desert. That was announced then. Okay, what else happened? Both holy temples were destroyed on the 9th of Av, the first one in 423 BCE, and then the second one by Rome in 69. Also on the 9th of Av, the Bar Kokhba massacre happened. Beitar fell. They plowed the temple grounds. The Romans plowed it up like with a plow. A year after it burned to a crisp. On the following year, on the same day, they came and plowed it up and renamed it and paved it over and made something completely different out of it. On the 9th of Av, the first crusade was declared in 1095. 10,000 Jews were killed just in the first month of the first crusade before they even left Europe. They were still in the neighborhood. They were like, yay, let's have a crusade. Let's get this crusade off to an awesome start and look for some Jews to kill. I know, there's some over there, let's go. That's what happened, and happened on Tisha B'Av. The Jews were expelled from England on Tisha B'Av in 1290. A couple hundred years later, the Spanish expulsion, the great, great tragedy. Jews lived there for 1,000 years, and suddenly you got to go, 1492 on Tisha B'Av. Both world wars began on Tisha B'Av in different years, obviously. The Warsaw Ghetto was sent to Treblinka on Tisha B'Av, and the final solution received formal approval by Yamach Shemo, whose name we won't say here, in 1941, all on Tisha B'Av. On the 10th of Av, the Holy Temple burnt. Then also there was a terrible bombing in 1994 in Buenos Aires that killed 86 people and wounded 300. Literally, it was the biggest lethal attack against a diaspora Jewish community since the Holocaust. If you weren't alive there, don't have a memory of that time, I do. Also on the 10th of Av was Gush Katif, as we say, the expulsion of Gaza. That went really well. But anyway, she said sarcastically. Then on the 12th of Av, Nachmanides' disputation with the Jewish convert to Christianity is a very, very famous event that happened. Of course, he won, but his prize was he got kicked out of Spain for the rest of his life. 15th of Av, everything starts turning around. It's the end of the dying of the desert. The ban on intertribal marriage is lifted. The tribe of Benjamin is readmitted to the Confederation of Tribes. Jeroboam's roadblocks that he made were removed. The dead were buried who died at Beitar. It's called quote unquote matchmaking day. Tu B'Av is there's the custom of maidens dancing in white dresses and young men going out to see those beautiful girls dancing in the vineyards and choosing brides for themselves, or maybe they chose, I don't know, could be. But anyway, it's sort of, I think somebody called it the Jewish Sadie Hawkins Day, which is, I don't know, don't like that very much, but it's a celebration day. It says in the Talmud that the two happiest days of the year were Tu B'Av and Yom Kippur. Okay, that's pretty interesting if you think about that. Then on the 17th of Av, more bad stuff happened. The Hebron massacre in 1929. On the 20th of Av, the Zohar was published. So those are some of the notable events in Av. This is a bigger picture of that picture I showed you before. The Jewish year, our cycle of sacred time. This is where we're at right here. We started this whole series in Chodesh Nissan with Yehuda. So we've gone through this whole first quadrant here. We're now doing last month the moon, this month the sun. Next month will be Chodesh Elul, and then we'll have done half of the Jewish year. And when we get on top, it's very interesting that it goes Mars, Venus, Mercury, then it goes Moon, Sun, Mercury, then we're going to have Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Saturn, Jupiter. So eventually we're going to get to all the planets, and when we see the repetition of the planets, next month we'll have the first repetition because we'll be talking about Mercury again, but as it relates to the mutable Earth sign of Virgo, we had talked about Mercury as it related to the mutable air sign of Gemini a couple of months ago. So it's kind of has a different way of manifesting. And we'll talk about that next month in this class. So as I said before, everyone has all 12 zodiac signs in their personal natal chart. Some people will say, why does my horoscope say I'm a Leo when I was born during Chodesh Tammuz? That's because the solar calendar and the Hebrew calendar are two completely different things. They're not utterly completely different, but they don't match up usually. And so if you overlay the Jewish calendar on top of the solar calendar, you actually get 36 different possible permutations of the zodiac. A person could be a Tammuz Leo They're born when the sun is in Leo, but it's still Chodesh Tammuz. They could be Av, Cancer. They could be born when the sun is in Cancer, but Chodesh Av has already begun. Or they could be a regular old Av Leo, born during solar Leo within the month of Av. Just happens to be that this year, and which is a relatively rare event, that solar Leo and Chodesh Av actually start on the first day. This does not happen a lot. So what we've been using as an example in these discussions about how everybody has all 12 signs is the example of the natal chart of the United States. And if you look at it over here, you can see that Leo right up here is the ruler of the 9th house in this chart. The 9th house is religion, philosophy, higher education, long distance travel, everything, people, places, and things that are quote unquote exotic or foreign to oneself. Okay, so like opposite, 9th house is opposite 3rd house. 3rd house is my neighborhood, and 9th house is everything that's not my neighborhood out there. Okay, and within America's 9th house over here, it's probably really hard to see, is the North Node, the North Lunar Node, which is like the tikkun point, destiny point in a way. So America's 9th house is ruled by the sun, illuminating everything so brightly as to eclipse all others, right? Where America goes, America shines so bright, nobody can see anything else. This is America, the melting pot of the world. That's the idea of Leo in the 9th house. Our religion, we are proud of, that's Leo, makes us a melting pot of foreign and exotic peoples from every place on earth. And our North Node, pictured up here, our destiny or fate or tikkun point is there. Our tikkun is to be a melting pot and a place where everyone, quote unquote, foreign and exotic can come together to make something new. Okay, it's the heart and spine of the American body, right? The idea of the heart and the spine as being related to Leo, this is the heart and spine of the American body, so to speak. Okay, so this is like that Leo energy needs to keep alive, that beating heart that pumps the blood, and the spinal column that centers and supports. That's what America is supposed to be in terms of how she relates to her citizens. Then we have the shadow side of that manifestation: violence, predatory, stalking, prideful, boastful, egotistical, melodramatic, selfish, and narcissistic America. I think we've seen manifestations of that as well in this. So this year, this Chodesh Av, which runs from July 22nd through August 19th this year, which also runs exactly by solar Leo. It's perfectly aligned this year. I have to actually check and see which year this is on the Metonic cycle and why that's happening. But anyway, it doesn't happen on a regular basis, so I'm kind of excited about it. There's a lot of things happening. The full moon in Aquarius on Tu B'Av is August 3rd. There's a lot of activity. I'm not going to go through what each and everything means, but I will say that because Mars has recently moved into Aries, where it's going to be for the rest of the year, there's going to be a lot of conflict and arguing, okay? But I think we already knew that. I don't think it takes an astrologer to tell you that there's going to be a lot of conflict and arguing this year. And I would like to express gratitude to all of the wonderful teachers who taught me many, many things that I learned and I'm giving over to you, including Matisyahu Glazerson, who wrote about the zodiac, astrology in a Jewish light, and a wonderful book I have that has all of this art and symbolism in the zodiac that was written by Iris Fishhoff with contributions by Ariel Cohen and Moshe Adel. Okay. Wow, I've talked and talked and talked. Now, who has questions? This is what I do every time I do this. I think I'm going to take questions in the middle of it. I never do. And now I'm ready. Anybody have any questions about what I've given over? Yeah. Jesse.
Yes, I kind of noticed that there's something else that happens that may have something to do with nowadays. when you see a solar eclipse, you see a corona. Does that have anything to do with virus, or is that just a joke?
No, it's just a joke, but it is kind of funny. If we can find one thing to laugh about today, I'll be really, really thrilled. So thank you for giving us that. Now, a corona means crown, right? They've always called it a corona in any language that, you know, if people are speaking Italian and they're talking about the sun, they're using whatever, it's the solar eclipse, they're using whatever word they're using that means crown to say corona, because that's what the solar eclipse.
In Hebrew?
I don't know. That's a good question. I do not know. I've never watched a solar eclipse with a Hebrew-speaking astronomer, and that is a great question. I need to look that up. Thank you for making me think of that. I need to ask someone who speaks Hebrew and has a scientific background, like what an astronomer would call it. Because a lay person who doesn't know anything might call it a keter, and maybe astronomer might call it that, or they might call it something else. So we'll have to find out. But yeah, keter, crown, royalty, Leo, sun, solar eclipse. See how all those symbolic words sort of like match up to give you this idea. Oh, okay, so I've been an astrologer forever. I never guess people's signs. People come to me and go, "Oh, guess my sign." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to do that. I don't play that game." But when I see someone that there's no way that I can be wrong, this is an example. I see this woman walking down the street. I'm sitting in Sfat in northern Israel, eating ice cream, minding my own business. I see this woman walking down the street. She's wearing a fabulous, I mean, the only thing I can say about her is fabulous, a fabulous leopard skin cape, like a leopard skin pillbox hat, Bob Dylan style, all this magnificent gold jewelry, high heels that are like gold lame. And I'm looking at her, and I just couldn't help myself. And I'm like, "Hi, can I just ask you a question? Are you a fabulous Leo?" Well, it ends up that she had sun, moon, and Leo rising. There was no way this woman was going to be able to hide her Leoness, and we became friends. And it ends up that she is an extremely famous vocal coach, and because she has, you know, everything in Leo, it's important for me to say that she's not just a vocal coach, she's a maestro. She's the queen of all vocal coaches. There is no one higher. So sometimes it's just so obvious. Like Leos are very, very obvious about their Leoness because they're the sun. It's like it's right out there. So when they want to be fabulous, there's nobody who is more fabulous than a Leo when they're ready to be fabulous about something. And by fabulous, I know you all know what I mean. Oh yes, Mark.
So you were talking about how somebody could be of Cancer or of Leo.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, I mean, so the typical would be of Leo, but if someone ends up being of Cancer, does that mean they're like a Leo but more emotional? Like how's that?
Well, so again, it's important to say that everything really depends on a person's own zodiacs. I'm sorry, their own individual natal chart, because many things influence the sun, the moon, the rising sign, all different planets. So it's hard to be, I want to give a general answer, but I want to give it with an addendum that it really just depends on the sign. But people who are born when the sun is still in Cancer, but Chodesh Av has already begun, have that moon influence. So they are more emotional than, I mean, but Av and Leo is also emotional in a different way than Cancer. Cancer cries, Leo roars, okay? So you know how those are two sides of the same thing? Depression is the flip side of anger. So depression, Cancer, anger, Leo, it's the same emotion, but it has two different manifestations. Cancer wet, Leo dry. Cancer cold, Leo hot, but it's the same thing. That's like how the sun and the moon are the same planet, like I was talking about. Not that they're a planet. There's no good way for me to say what I'm trying to say because I don't have the word for it. So they're the same symbolic entity split into two halves, sun and moon. right? So yeah, so somebody who's been born during Chodesh Av, but if the sun is still in solar Cancer, is going to have that Cancerian thing. But it's like, you know, people who are born with sun in Leo, moon in Cancer, they are parental because they're father and mother. You know, the sun is the king, and the mother and the moon is the great earth mother. So there's people who have strong Cancer Leo placements and planets that are strongly placed, and those together, not just one or the other, but when they have both of them, have that sort of parental, maternal, whatever you want to call it, paternal vibe around them, and this kind of air of authority also, like that that parents have for children. At the same time, Leo is the inner child, that golden child, you know, that one moment in childhood that maybe that we could remember when everything was perfect. You know, when we were swinging on the swing at 3 years old and the sun was shining, and we didn't know that daddy was an alcoholic in the house beating mommy. I mean, I'm not talking about me, Lahavdil. I'm talking about just like general people. So children have, you know, most children, God willing, have this, you know, have an innocent, joyful sense until they start learning things about real life and the grown-up world that, you know, attempts to crush their spirit and make them conform into unhappy humans like the rest of the adults. But think about how children are when they're really little. 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-olds. I love 3-year-olds. 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds really like get that whole inner child fun thing. Leo loves to have fun, you know, that joyful kind of fun. And Leo is very generous and loves to entertain, and like not only entertain as an entertainer, but like to be a host or a hostess, like to be a raconteur, you know, to sit around telling stories and drinking champagne, telling stories about how they partied with princesses and princes on yachts and smoked joints with Queen Elizabeth on the roof of Buckingham Palace. I mean, I don't know anyone who's personally done that, but that would be a Leo thing to do and to say and to talk about, because they're very celebrity conscious. And they're very, very conscious of status, of other people's status, and how they relate to that status. Yeah, so any other questions about Leo and Av and Shimon and what we're going through right now? So I'm really looking forward to, you know, getting through this month of Av over to the other side, to Tu B'Av, to the happy side, just because it's just been really, 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 really rough. And I just want to give us all a blessing that Hashem should help us and protect us and all of our loved ones, that we should be protected by the merit of our ancestors. Okay, the merit of our ancestors should protect us and all of our loved ones during this really, really dangerous time period, and that we should just cling to our faith and to love and to each other and to Hashem and get through this and to the other side together. Okay.
Amen. King Hiratzon. Thank you, Lorelai.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kol hakavod to you. May you be